Always exciting to start a live stream. What is going on, YouTube? It's the first stream of 2021, and I got a good one for you today. My name is Brian Morrison. I'm a software engineer based out of Chicago, Illinois. I've been doing these live streams, I don't know, on and off for the last 2 years or so. Been all around different channels on the internet, but I kind of settled on YouTube, so here we are. Every weekend at... Oh, got an echo. So yeah, every weekend, or every week on Wednesday, 8:30, I'm doing one of these things, unless otherwise noted. For schedule updates, always check me out on Twitter. My handle is BrianMMDev, or you can communicate with me directly on my Discord channel, or my Discord server. Fullstack.chat is the URL that you can use to get to that. So yeah, today we're going to be going over how to use Git and GitHub, and we're starting very, very basic ground level stuff. So if you've kind of been used to this, the beginning of it probably is going to be a little familiar, but as we go, it's going to get a little more advanced. So the stream's going to be set up in 3 parts. Part 1 is working with GitHub and getting started with Git and GitHub. I'm going to describe what they're both used for and, you know, what the difference is really between the two. We're going to learn how you can pull code from a repository, push code to a repository, create repositories, all sorts of cool stuff there. Part 2 is going to be all about branching and how you can create branches, what they're used for, how to merge branches back together. So that's going to cover the second part of the video. And then the third part of the stream is going to be on collaboration and how you can use pull requests, how you can fork repositories like many open source projects work with, and how you can handle merge conflicts. If you have multiple developers working on a single repository, merge conflicts will come up. So we're going to go over how you can tackle those. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, in the first part of this, we're going to go over how you use Git. I've got my machine up here. I have the Git website set up, but before we even jump into there, I guess I should probably take a break and explain kind of what Git and GitHub are used for. So Git is what's called a version control software, version control platform. Software platform, I don't even know what you really call it. I guess it's kind of more software. But anyway, the primary purpose is to allow you to create different versions of your code. So as you progress with making changes to your repositories, as you add what are called commits into the repository, it almost makes like a timeline of your code. So as you make changes, it creates like a little snapshot of the code and says at this point in time the code looked like this. And then the farther you go, the more you add, the bigger the chain of commits gets. We'll see all this in action, so it'll make a little more sense. But GitHub is actually not Git. They're kind of related. They're a similar name, but Git and GitHub are 2 completely separate products. So Git is the underlying software that uses everything. GitHub is a service, and it's by far the most popular Git service where you can actually push your code to a remote repository. It's kind of like a centralized place where your code can be stored, and it allows multiple developers to work within a single repository all together. So they are 2 completely separate concepts. Even though a lot of people kind of think they are, they are kind of the same, they're really not. They're 2 separate services. There are many other types of Git remote services, centralized hosting for your code. The one that another one that I use a lot is called Azure DevOps. They have a repositories feature where you can store code there. And another popular one is GitLab. GitLab is the other one that seems to be really popular in the space. And you can even set up a Git remote on your own system. But yeah, so Diamond, what's up? Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. Yeah, I've got nothing else really more to say about GitHub other than just getting into it. So for part 1, where when we're working with just Git and Git repositories, we're going to set up Git and on a machine. So like if you don't have anything installed on a machine, if you don't have Git installed or configured, I'm going to walk through how to set that up. And then we're going to get into creating a repository, pushing code, and then we're going to create a small website and push it up to the repository so you can see how that whole process works. And then final part of section 1 is going to be to pull down code changes from a repository, kind of mimicking as if someone else was making changes to it, working on it, or you on another machine. It all kind of works the same way. Okay, so Pepcac, how you doing today, buddy? Hopefully you're having a good day. All right, let's get into it. So I'm on the Git website. The link to this is actually in the description of the video. So if you're watching this later, just check down there. So you're gonna end up on this git-scm.com is the main website for Git. /downloads is where you get to the actual downloadable executables for your machine. So obviously you're given a couple of different options: Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. I am using Windows here, so I'm going to select Windows. We're going to click on that guy, and this thing should download here. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner it is downloading. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. And it's going to ask me if I want to actually install this. We're going to go ahead and click yes. And this, for the most part, you can kind of just next this all the way through. There's not a whole lot you can do. I had Git install this machine, is why I got that prompt. But you shouldn't if you haven't installed Git before. So I'll go ahead and just keep nexting through all this. I don't change any of these options, although you feel free to explore these. They're not really necessary, at least in my opinion. I've never really had to go in here and change anything. I just kind of next all the way through this. All right, so once it gets to this part is actually installing the software on the computer. Excuse me, I'm gonna step away for a second while I crack this can open. I did that once a little too close to the microphone, and I saw the mic just blast into the red. Hopefully I didn't do it again. All right. So I'm going to uncheck view release notes because I really don't need to see that, and go ahead and click finish. All right, so now Git is installed on our machine. Now the next part of this process is we're going to create a repository. So I'm going to go into my GitHub profile. If you don't have a profile, just go to github.com and sign up for an account. Completely free. There's no charge for any of this unless you want to host private stuff, but we're not going to get into any of that today. And then in the upper right-hand corner, you can see there's this little plus icon. If you click on that, actually I'm going to zoom in here a little bit just to make it a little easier to see. If you click on that and go to New Repository, you'll be presented with a form like this. And I already have a name of repository. The name is very important because this is what you're going to use to be able to pull code down into your machine. Diamond says, ouch, my ears. I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to. I meant not to do it so close to the microphone, but, you know, so it goes. So I'm going to leave everything else kind of as it is. So you can give your repository a description if you want to. You have the option of creating public or private repository. Public means anyone in the world can see it. That does not mean that they can actually edit your repository. So it's only people who can see it and download it. Private means no one gets access to it except for you and the people that you give access to. So we're going to leave this public because anyone who wants to access this, you know, they should be able to. These down here, these kind of give you an option to kind of, I guess, seed your repository with some files and some basic things. I generally don't check any of these boxes because if you have code on your machine locally, it causes problems with pushing it up because you need to basically pull the existing files down, make your changes, and then push them back up. And then Azure Pipelines is something that I have set up for my account. We can safely ignore that. So I'll go ahead and click Create Repository. And as you can see, you'll be presented with a screen like this. I'm going to close that out, give myself a little more screen real estate here. This kind of walks you through how you would go about like what's called cloning a Git repository down to a machine. The main part you really need to be concerned with here is this URL here. This URL is what's going to be used to access the repository and pull the code down. So we're going to select all this and we're going to copy this, and I'm just going to open up a new Notepad instance here and paste that in there so we have a quick reference to that. And then I also have on this machine, I have an empty folder open in VS Code. I'm a big fan of VS Code. I use it for most of my projects unless I'm working with C#, which then I use Visual Studio. But inside of VS Code, if you hold down Control and press the backtick key that's just under the escape on the left-hand side, is a quick way for you to open up a terminal. And I'm going to maximize that, make it a little more real estate again. And then on here, let's actually check to see. I might have to restart this because I had it open already. So if I do git double hyphen version, yeah, it says it's not recognized. So actually, I'm going to have to close this guy and we're going to open it back up. Okay, same folder's open back up. I'm going to use that same shortcut, Control backtick, or you can click on Terminal and go to New Terminal. And then let's do Git version. So now I see Git version 2.30.0.windows.1. So that means Git's working. So now I can do Git Clone, and then I'm going to paste in my URL that we copied from GitHub itself and click Enter. And it says it cloned it into a new folder that has the same name of the repository. So if we open this, you could see it is indeed an empty repository. Okay, so Git Clone is really like where you want to start with this. It's definitely a command that you want to commit to memory, I would say. And the more that you work with Git repositories in general, a lot of these common commands are going to come secondhand. I mean, Git Clone, Git Pull, Push, Merge, those are branch are a couple of the most common ones, and we'll probably touch on most of those tonight, if not all of them. I think all of them, actually. Anyway. So to actually add some files in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. We're going to create just a very, very basic website. So I'm going to create a new file called index.html. And then I have some code that I've prepared ahead of time that I'm going to paste in here. And once we get all these changes or this code in here, I'm going to fire this thing up using a plugin called Live Server. That's going to let us see the website in our browser. So this is the main HTML file. Let's go ahead and also create a style.css because I'm going to add some CSS to this just to make it look a little bit nicer than just the raw HTML. You can see I also have Bootstrap in here just to kind of help with some of the layout stuff, although I probably could have avoided doing that, but it's easy. It's easy stuff, and I've been working with Bootstrap for a long time. So here is our code. And you can see as I've made changes, added files, and made changes inside of VS Code on the left-hand side, I have this little bubble here that says 2. And that means that there are 2 changes to my repository. Built inside of GitHub, or inside of VS Code, is this source control module, which lets you use Git without using the terminal. And we're going to kind of bounce back and forth between the two just so I can demonstrate how to do things in one way versus another way. But I really only use this specific panel if I'm quickly making changes and committing it up. Otherwise, if I need to do anything more advanced, I generally go into the terminal itself. Okay, let's go ahead and right click this and open with Live Server. If you don't have that option, if you go into the extensions panel here and search for Live Server, this plugin right here by Ritwick Day is the one you want to be interested in. And I'm going to right click on this again, open with Live Server, and it should pop our website up just like this. So this is just a very basic website, again, that we're going to be making some changes to as the process goes. Hey James, what's going on? Thanks for joining tonight. All right, so let's go ahead and make a change to this, or I guess we have our changes in here already. We got those 2 pending changes that we already added, those 2 files. So from there are 2 ways that we can do this. I'm going to go through the terminal first. So we're going to open the terminal back up, and I'm going to use the command git add dot. And what this is going to do is it's going to basically tell Git, hey, all the files you have, these are the ones that I want to add into what's called a commit. Inside of GitHub or Git, remember I was saying earlier that it almost lets you keep separate snapshots of your code throughout time. Those snapshots are called commits, and in order to add files and changes to a commit, we have to do what's called stage them. And by using git add and then putting a period at that, you're basically telling Git any and all changes that I have there, I want to stage everything. Okay, so if I enter that, I'm sorry, I got to change directory, so I'm going to cd into 2021.1, which is the etc. That's the actual repository itself, and we'll do git add dot. And there we go. So you don't get any kind of output here, but that means that the files are staged. And if you come back into this actual panel here, you can see instead of just changes here, we have staged changes above that, which basically means these files, the changes that were made to these files, I'm going to go ahead and consider this to be part of the commit. And then because our path is getting long, I'm just going to minimize the panel there. Now, in order to commit a change, or to take your stage files and add them to a commit and push it into the repository, the command you're going to want to use is git commit, and then you got to put what's called a message with your commit, which is basically like it kind of details out what your changes are. So you can do this by hitting -m and then open a quote, and then you can type your message in here. So a very, very common thing you'll see in repositories is the first commit is going to be initial commit, which basically means this is where we're starting. This is the base. There's nothing beyond here. There's nothing inherently important or unique about initial commit being the message here. It's just a common practice that I've seen. So I'll go ahead and hit enter. And we can see that there are 2 files have changed, 35 insertions. As you make changes to your files, Git will actually tell you what it's recognized has changed. Okay? So now you'll also notice in the source control panel of VS Code, those changes have gone away, which basically means we've added that commit. I also have a plugin installed on my machine called Git Lens, which is a very, very popular and powerful plugin for VS Code that lets you do some pretty cool stuff. With Git Lens, I can open up and I can actually view the commits. So as we add more commits to this, we'll check in here periodically and we'll be able to see the timeline of our code as it changes. And if you select it, you can see what files were added, what was removed, what was changed. And if you select an individual file, you can also see on the left-hand pane here where it was before, or how the code was before, and then the right-hand side what it looks like now. And this is a little bit less apparent because we added a new file. But you see on the left-hand side how there's this red bar here, and the right-hand side there's everything blue. Those color codes kind of indicate what changes were made. So like red means something was removed, blue means something was added. And I think if something was changed, it'll actually show red and blue side by side. I'm like 99% sure. I should know that because I work with VS Code on a daily basis, but sometimes you work with stuff so quick you don't really pay attention. You just kind of like do it instinctively. Okay, so this is all set up. Now, the next thing we need to do is what's called push the code, and or push the commits rather, not even necessarily the code, but the commits. So when you push it, what you're doing is you're pushing it up to what's called a remote, and in this case, the remote is GitHub. If I open up my terminal again, and let's bring this guy and make this all bigger so we have some space to work with, we can do git. Let's see, what do we want to do here? If we do git remote v, just to demonstrate, you can see the remote is displayed on the left-hand side. It says, this is the name of the remote, and that's how we reference it on our actual machine. This is not shared between Git and GitHub. This is just how your machine references it. And then you can see the URL on where you're pulling code. So you see we have fetch on the right-hand side, and this is the URL we're using, and then we also have push. So it's like this line tells VS Code, or I guess Git, where it's going to be pulling the code down from, and the second line tells us where it's going to be pushed to. So yeah, that's I just wanted to show that off real quick. So the command you want to use in order to actually push your code is just git push, and hit enter. And I'm prompted for credentials because this is the first time I'm actually pushing up to my repository with this machine. And if you just set up Git, you'll be prompted with the same thing on first push. And this is all kind of this is related back to what I said earlier, where like a public repository, unless your user count is added as what's called a collaborator in that repository, you're unable to just randomly push stuff. So GitHub is actually saying like, hey, I want to make sure you have access to this to be able to push to this repository. So I'm gonna go ahead and click sign in with my browser. Now I'm already signed in, so it kind of just said authentication succeeded. If you're not signed in to GitHub, this will just present a form for you to sign in, and then it'll also show you a little dialog that says, are you sure you want to allow this application to access your GitHub profile? So for both of those, you can pretty much just say yes, and then we're now authenticated. So if I go back into my terminal here, you can see there's a bunch of lines that were added here. And more or less what all this stuff means is our push was successful. If anything went wrong, you'll see some errors inside of here saying that something went wrong. All right, so that's all fine and good. We've made some changes on our machine, but what happens if, let's say theoretically, you have like a desktop and a laptop, and you want to make changes on your desktop, but then you want to go to a coffee shop or something and work on the code. I don't know. We need to know how to pull changes down. So in order to demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back into GitHub, and let's refresh this page to see our code. And now there is there's a pretty nifty feature of GitHub where you can actually edit stuff directly within here. So let's go inside of index.html, and let's go ahead and click this little pencil icon on the upper right hand corner, and this lets us edit this file. And let's change something in here. Follow along as we cover the basics of Git and GitHub. Let's go ahead and add something else here. So I'm going to add a new line. We'll just do h2, and we'll say here are some changes. Why not? Are some changes! Exclamation point. Let's close off our h2 tag. And on the bottom of the page itself, you can see it's actually prompting for those commit details. The same thing. This is exactly the same process that's happening behind the scenes as we did inside of VS Code. So this guy here is the commit message, and this is an extended commit message. You don't have to populate any of this stuff. If you don't, what you see populated inside of here is what GitHub is going to say. This is the name of the commit. So as I hit commit changes, I'll just leave that default. It says update index.html. Our changes were just committed to our repository right within GitHub, and we didn't have to make any changes on a machine. Generally, you're not going to do this, but sometimes it is nice. Like if you know you've misspelled something on a website and you're like, I just want to go in and fix the spelling, this can be useful. But really the purpose of this, like I said, to demonstrate was how, like, it's to simulate you making changes on a remote machine or someone else making changes to your repository. So if we go back into the code tab and we go to you can see now there's 2 commits instead of just the one, and I click on this, we can see we've started building that timeline of code. So we can see our initial commit was committed 6 minutes ago, and the update index.html commit was committed 38 seconds ago. If I head back into VS Code, the way that we're going to want to get these new commits pulled down is we want to do Git Pull and hit enter. And you can see there's a bunch of stuff here that's basically, again, saying, hey, this was done successfully. If there's a problem, it'll light up in red and tell you there's an error. And then if I head back into my source control panel here and go to commits, we can see our new commit was added down. Let's expand this out a little bit and select that. We can see the plus and minus means that something was changed. We'll click index.html just to see those changes. And here are the new things that were added. Here's that H2 tag we just added. It looks like GitHub also added a new line at the end there, which is generally best practice when working with code. So if we go back into our files here, we can also see that the working file inside of the File Explorer on the left-hand side, we also have that H2 tag. So now all of our changes have been fully synced up, and this pretty much ends section 1 on how you can get started working with Git and GitHub. The next thing we're going to move on to is working with branching, and we'll be explaining some concepts around branching and what they're used for. And yeah, let's just go ahead and hop into it. Give me 1 sec. Actually, I'm going to take a drink. After talking for a long time, my throat definitely gets dry. I don't think that's a me thing, but yeah, oh well. Okay, so branches are a way. So we've kind of explained that when using Git, you're creating a timeline, right? Branches allow you to create a completely separate timeline of your code. So multiple people can be making commits to different branches simultaneously, and they don't affect each other until you try and what's called merge them back in. When you create a branch, you're basically taking a snapshot at that point and you're creating a completely separate timeline, and I'm going to show how that works here in a sec. But merging is basically the practice of combining those two back together, so this way the code is the same on at least one of the branches. You can merge back and forth, but usually only merge from one branch to one branch, or one branch to another rather than back and forth. I guess if you have a workflow that requires you to keep multiple branches in sync, that's a possibility, but I haven't worked in an environment like that to date. So the other things that you can also use branches for, which is pretty cool, is like if you need to, if you want to experiment with code and you want to say like, hey, I want to play around with something, but I don't want to affect the main branch. You can create a branch, make your changes, test them, see how they work, and then if they don't, you just kind of like scrap the branch, just delete it and go back to where you were before. It's really, really simple. Or if you like them, you merge them back in. A lot of people also use it for adding features to code, for fixing bugs, testing code. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do it. So to get started, we're going to create a branch here actually. So I'm going to open my terminal back up again, and let's do git branch. Actually, I think it's git. Well, I guess we'll do this separately. So we'll do it in 2 commands. To create a branch, the command is git branch, and then let's put the name of the branch in. I have one that I'm gonna do. We're gonna play around with the styles here. We'll say testing styles, and hit enter. And you see, there's no real output. But if I do git branch and then a -v, that's a way for you to be able to display your branches that are set up with your repository. So if I hit enter, we can see we have here's the master branch that we've been working off of. I probably should change it to main, but this is where we're at now. And then we also have testing styles, which is that branch we just created. And now you can see they're both the same. You can see here's the commit ID, and then here's the commit message that we've added to our that we've actually set to our commits. They're the same exact thing because we haven't actually made any changes. So in order to switch branches locally, so you have to basically tell your code editor you want to switch branches. The command you want to use is git checkout and then the name of the branch. So we'll do testing styles, and this might be a little hard to see on the stream. Yeah, in fact, one of my overlays is covering it. So let's minimize this actually up a little bit. On the lower left-hand corner of VS Code, down here, you can see there is this master here. That's the name of the current working branch that we're on inside of VS Code. It's a nice indicator of just so you can quickly see like, hey, where am I working? And if I hit enter in this command, you can see on the lower left-hand corner, it just now changed to testing styles. So that's the branch we're now working with. Hey, Andrew, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the compliment. I really appreciate it, man. Okay, so we're switched to our branch, and let's go ahead and like make some changes. So let's close. I'm going to close this. I click the X, so it doesn't actually, it doesn't get rid of the terminal session, just minimizes it. And let's go back in here and let's play around with some styles here. So if we go back to here's the web page we've been working with. Like, what if we don't like this? What if we want to make the whole thing, let's go dark mode, right? That's a really popular thing. So let's add some code in here. We'll set the body. We're gonna make the background. Let's do 111, which is a really, really dark gray. And then we'll also come in here. Let's save that and see what that looks like. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't like that. I'm usually pretty good with CSS. My terminal's still running. Okay, it's offline. Let's right click and open with live server. Nah, don't like that. Interesting. All right, background color. How about that? Derp. Maybe. Okay, never mind. Let's not go overcomplicate on this. Okay, so back up here. Let's say, like, what if we want to make the background color? Let's make that little thing dark mode, I guess, right? The background color, we'll set that to 111, and then we're gonna set the let's set the color to a light gray. So we'll do triple E. Go ahead and save that. Switch over. Okay, so now this thing is dark mode. Yeah, so we've made some changes, and say we want to commit these changes. So remember how I said earlier I was going to switch back and forth? So we'll actually do this one from inside of the built-in source control panel of VS Code. So inside of here, if I want to add this commit, I could just say set to dark mode and hit enter. Do I have styles in CSS? Pepcac says styles.css. No, file I'm referring to is style.css, so that should work. Plus, it's getting all this, so I'm not sure why the body style wasn't being applied, but it's not a big deal. That's not the point of it's not the point of tonight. So now, if I've added my commit, and if I pop this guy back up my terminal, and I do git branch branch v, just like we did earlier, git branch v, you can now see we have master is now on update index.html, and set to dark mode is the commit that we're working on with testing styles. Oh, another thing to note, if you see the star on the left-hand side of your branch name, that's the one you're currently set to in the terminal. So that's something definitely to keep in mind. Okay, so I also want to use a plugin called Git Graph, which is pretty neat. It lets you see your branches very visually, which is really helpful. Like if you're working in an environment that has a lot of branches, sometimes it gets a little crazy to navigate. So it's good to see like where the branches lie. So if I click on Git Graph, you can see we have, there's no real changes here because we haven't made a completely separate change in here. It's all still technically part of the same timeline. So actually to demonstrate this, to give a little bit better of a visual, let's switch back to master and then make a change there. Inside of, I'm gonna have to minimize this again a little bit just to show this. So the other way that you can switch branches inside of VS Code is if you click on the name of the branch, it'll show you what branches are available on your machine. So instead of having to go to the terminal, I can click on that, I can select master, and now I'm checked out for master. You can see my hero wrapper now class style is now changed back to what it was before. And let's say we want to change this to just a very light blue. Now I also have a plugin installed in VS Code that lets me select a color because I don't know these codes off the top of my head except for a couple of them. So let's, blue is one of my favorite colors. So let's go ahead and just select kind of a light blue there and go ahead and do that. save it, and we can see on the back our guy updated to blue. So let's commit this now and say change BG to blue. Control Enter will actually, is what I did to just go ahead and it stages the files, it commits them, and you don't have to do it in the terminal, which, you know, depending on your style is, you know, it's good or bad. I don't know. It's up to you. Options are never a bad thing. Now let's try this again. If I go to Git Graph, we can see master is here and testing styles is completely set aside from our master branch. And then same thing, if I go back and I switch back to testing styles and we go to our style, our background color is now back to 111 and our color is back to EEE, and our code is now, or our website is now that dark mode. All right, so let's say I'm actually going to undo my changes because it's going to cause what's called a merge conflict, and I'm not really in a position where I want to discuss that, at least not yet. So we're going to switch back to here. We're going to undo the change. We'll set this back to EEE just like it was before, and we'll say revert changes. Revert a previous change. Control Enter, and now everything should be set up for us to be able to merge. So if I open my terminal, again, like I said earlier, merging is the process of taking all the commits from one branch and basically pushing them into wherever your destination is. So what we want to do is we actually want to be on the branch we want to push to. I might have that wrong. Someone help me out in the chat. I can't remember why. I don't know why I kind of blanking on this. I think you want to merge to the one you're from. So anyway, we're on master. Let's do Git Merge, and actually let's do double hyphen help. Let's see what this does. This opens up in here. Git Merge, stat squats. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's the one you're currently working on is where you want to. So yeah, we're working on master, and let's say we want to merge in our changes that we made inside of testing styles. So if I do Git Merge and then I say the name of the branch that I want to use, we'll do testing-styles and hit enter. And we can see now we have 3 changes were made to style.css it shows here. If we go into our styles file, we can see we now have that kind of dark mode theme going on here. So that's now inside of our master. And then if I go back to Git Graph, you can actually see a visual representation of how we've branched off, created a separate timeline for our code, and then at this point in time, we've merged it back in. So Git Graph is really useful for trying to like see these things visually. Let's see, what else do we want to cover? Yeah, so the other thing I guess I also wanted to just kind of like toss out there is you can actually create kind of a foldery structure for your branches, and it depending on the service you're working with, it might display them a little bit differently. I'm not sure if GitHub actually does. Let's test this. This might be a scrapped section of the video because I kind of just thought of this on the fly. In any case, it kind of helps you group some of your things together. So what a lot of people will do is if you're working on some code and you discover a bug, like you can work directly in that, or you can create a branch. You can work directly in the main master repository, or you can create branches to work on those bugs, which is generally, I mean, depending, it all depends on what your work process is or workflow is. It's an option, definitely. So what you can do is, or at least a lot of people do, is if I found a bug in my code, I can do git branch, and a shorthand way of doing this, actually it's git checkout b. Git checkout -b will, in one single fell swoop, create the branch and check it out right away. So let's say bug forward slash found a bug. Found a bug, apparently. We found a bug. I'm gonna fix that and go back to bug. All right, so we found a bug, right? Now if I look at this, you'll see now I have both of them in here, but you can see we have a bug ahead of here and it says found a bug. But you can also do like feature would be another one. Feature, adding some feature. and click enter there. And then some people will use this kind of like, I guess, a prefix on what exactly that branch is related to. Some people, I've actually worked in environments where I have my own kind of like prefix to branch name. So like it'd be B Morrison / whatever I'm working on, for better or worse. It's all kind of up to what your work style is. So that's just some of the common ways that you can use branches. The other thing that I also wanted, as far as my personal preference, best practice is what's called trunk-based development. And that means everybody on the team works all off of whatever the main source branch is. Like us at work, we have a branch called develop, and that's where everybody works off of. We don't create separate branches to do things unless it's like a really big thing, or unless you're playing around with something. Most of our changes are all done right off of that same branch, which actually has a couple of benefits. The first being that you're kind of forced to work in such a way that you have to make small changes, so this way you don't break the code and affect things in a big way. The other benefit is because you're making small changes, your commits, because you're making small changes, the merge conflicts, like if you have multiple people, I guess, working on the same file, and you go ahead to, you guys both commit at the same time, there's a chance you would have a conflict, which means that like Git doesn't know how to automatically figure out how to merge those files together. So you have to do it manually. Because your commits are very small, merge conflicts are also very small, which means it's less of a headache to try and navigate that, which we'll talk about merge conflicts in the next, in a little while here. There was one more. I lost it. And I didn't write this down because I'm kind of thinking about some of the stuff off the top of my head. Anyway, if it comes back to me, I'll mention it. But those are at least two good things about trunk-based development. Okay, so the last thing I really kind of wanted to talk about this evening is how you can collaborate with other developers on GitHub, because this is some good stuff, and this is less so in Git and more on GitHub. It's the concepts and principles are exactly the same across different platforms, and I think this is all actually built into Git, but most of the time you're going to be working with it through some kind of service like GitHub, Azure DevOps, GitLab, all those services we mentioned earlier on. So the first thing I want to touch on in this section is what's called a pull request. And what we did just a minute ago is we made some changes and we merged them in, but it all is kind of done locally on my machine. Well, another way you can do merge stuff in is you can create what's called a pull request up in your service. And what a pull request does is it lets multiple developers see changes to the code, collaborate on it, add comments to it, perform a code review. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. So I'm still on I'm on this branch, feature, adding some feature, right? So let's just add something inside of here. Let's go ahead and add another line, and we'll say, what else are we learning? How to deal with merges. Now, this isn't necessarily like a feature, just adding a single line of code. Ideally, in a feature, you'd have a bunch of stuff and it adds some new functionality to the code. But for the sake of the demonstration, this is totally fine. So if I click on my source control panel here, and I can say added the feature, it's going to be a message, and we'll control enter in order to push that, or to save that, to commit that into the branch. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come in here, and I'm going to git push. I think I have to set upstream. It might create it for me automatically. I actually don't know off the top of my head. So we'll do git push and hit enter. Yeah, it says it doesn't like that. So we'll do git push, set upstream, origin, feature, / adding some feature. So what this is basically doing, so like earlier we did a git push, which takes all of our local changes and pushes them up into GitHub. What set upstream does is this is basically telling Git, I want, anytime I push commits for this specific branch, I want you to look at this remote, and we demonstrated this earlier. If I scroll up a little bit, you can see our remotes. I have, there you go, right here. It's a little messed up here the way that it's viewed, but we have the remote name is origin, and then the name of the branch is feature / adding some feature. I just use the same exact name, but you can, if you really wanted to, create a completely separate branch name. I wouldn't recommend it because then you have to keep track of where you're pushing and pulling to, but anyway, let's go ahead and hit enter. And what this actually does is this will create that branch up in GitHub and push the changes up. So let's see, let's go up to back into GitHub, And let's refresh this guy so we can see all of our all of our commits are up here already. Let's go back to the code tab. And yeah, okay, so like when you create a new branch and you push some changes, it'll actually have this little notification that says, hey, there's some stuff has been pushed. You should create a pull request. So we're going to do just that. There's two ways you can create a pull request. One is right here, and the other one is inside a pull request tab. We're actually going to do it manually because clicking this button saves us a couple steps, which is what you'll do in most actual like working environments. But again, for demonstration purposes, we're going to create this manually. So if I click on new pull request, you can see you have your base branch, which you're going to pull your changes into, and then you have the compare branch, which is where you want to pull the changes from. So we'll select our feature branch that we created, and it says it'll show you all the commits that are on that feature branch. It'll also show you all the changes that have been done to all the files that are being pushed up or being compared right now. And now this is very similar to merging, but one of the cool things that happens when you click create pull request is it doesn't actually do that. You can also add a title to pull request. Sometimes you can just put whatever you want in here, something descriptive. You can add comments, but we'll go ahead and just click create pull request. And what this will do is this creates this what's called a pull request. You see, if you have a number 1, every pull request you create will increment this number. It shows all the changes. You can come into commits and see those actual commits themselves, and you can click on them to say like, hey, what were the changes to those specific commits? But one of the coolest things you can do, what I really like using pull requests for, especially on merging large branches inside of a team, is if you go to files changed, you can do what's called a code review in here. And a code review means like you can add comments to specific things of code. So like, let's kind of simulate what would happen if you were doing a code review. So you'd come through, you'd say like, okay, what files were changed? What changes were made to the file? And you could say like, come down here and be like, hey, this should be uppercase. If you click, I guess I should back up. On the left-hand side, as you hover over the lines, you can see the little blue plus icon that's coming across. If I click on that, it lets me actually add a comment right in line to that specific line of code. So if I say this should be proper case, I can either add a single comment, which will just kind of set it at that, or you can do what's called start a review. If I start a review, what this is going to do is it lets you scroll down and add reviews to each one of the files. So if I'm working inside of GitHub and I'm doing a code review, what I'll often do is I'll come in here, I'll look at one file and I'll say, okay, I'll scan the file, so all the changes, things I want to make comments on, and it doesn't always, when you're doing a code review, I guess one of the things I really want to kind of drive home is it's, unless you're working in a terrible team, it's not personal. Like everyone kind of wants the best, and this is a way for developers to kind of come to agreements on each other. Everybody has a little bit different style of working. So not everybody's going to write code exactly the same way. So anyway, I'm just going to put this should be proper case, and I can scroll down and we can say like, let's lighten this up a little bit. And then I will hit add review comment. And then those are the only 2 files, but I've worked with pull requests that have like 60, 70 some files, and probably more, but that's the one specific instance that comes to mind because there's a lot of changes. Anyway, so if I click on finish your review, you can add one final comment. I get to say, great job overall. Granted, this is just me doing this, and sometimes I will come in here and do a code review on my old code because sometimes you miss things, and I like this to be able to like quickly scan through the code and add myself little tasks of like, oh, I have to change this, I have to go back and change this, I have to go back and change this, and then we'll just go ahead and submit the review. Submit it. Let this guy load here, and we've actually been brought back into this conversation tab. So inside of the conversation tab, we can see here's the message. We can also see here's all my comments that I added into these individual lines of code. Now, anyone else can come in here and say like, okay, I'll fix this and hit comments. But one of the other cool things you can do to like kind of minimize this is like, I have here is like, let's lighten this up. Let's come in here and just say like, no, I think this should be this way it is. Okay, and go ahead and click comment again here. Now, because we're not really going to make any changes to this specific comment, I can actually click resolve conversation. And what happens is it doesn't really go away, but it kind of minimizes it. So this conversation tab becomes kind of a hub inside of the pull request for everything that's going on, all the changes that need to be made, anything that needs to be fixed, all that stuff. You can see on the right-hand side, you can link into reviewers, who's been assigned to it. You can add labels and projects and do all sorts of cool project management-y type stuff in here. But that's that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're doing today. Okay, so we said, okay, I'll fix this. So we're going to go back and fix this. Let's go ahead and head back into our code. And we'll just go ahead and make this all proper case. So how to deal, I don't know if, I guess, yeah, W in the width is probably going to be proper case. And we just made that all and fix that, right? So we'll save this, and I'm going to come back into my source control and say made next list item proper case. And I'll click control, I click control save, control enter. And because we've been hopping around and doing things in different ways, I wanted to show one other way that you can do a pull and a push all at the same time. Is in VS Code on the bottom here. There's this little icon next to the name of the branch that actually shows you how many changes are in the remote that need to be pulled, and how many changes are in your local repository that need to be pushed up. If you click that, it does it all for you. So basically, it's syncing up our local repository, specifically this branch, with the remote branch on GitHub. So if we go back into GitHub and we refresh this, actually, I don't think it needs to be refreshed. Yeah, so you don't even need to refresh. This happens all in real time. You can see here's the comment, or here is the next commit that's been added. It does it kind of all for you dynamically and automatically. So let's go back into files changed, and this conversation was resolved. That one looks fixed. So I'm actually going to go ahead here and say resolve conversation, because that's been fixed. And now everything looks good. So we'll go ahead and merge the pull request. And this is the same process as merging as I was telling you about before. So let's go ahead and click merge. It gives you the option to add some comments in here. We'll go ahead and click confirm merge to merge our changes from our feature branch back to the master branch. And it says the pull request was successfully merged and closed. Now you have the option to delete the branch, which is it's generally best practice. Like if you have a lot of long living branches out there, they become really hard to track and find out, like, why are they here? What's the purpose of them? And what are they for? So I generally, when I'm done with a PR, I'll kill the branch. There's like no need to keep it around. It'll still be on my local repository, but I just kind of ignore it at that point. So inside of our code, we can also see, like, this is the name of that commit that was merged in. Here's the latest commit that was added. It was a merge pull request number 1. If I even click on number 1, you can even see here's all the details for that specific merge request. So yeah, it's pretty cool stuff in here. Okay, so the other thing I also wanted to demonstrate is how you can... Now, remember how earlier I said I wanted to simulate making actual changes? Now we're actually going to make different changes as a separate user. So I have a second user account set up. We're going to go over 2 more things, I guess, inside 2 more topics that we're going to cover inside of this this video. The first one is forking. So inside of GitHub, the concept of forking means let's take a copy of a repository from someone else's account, and I want to make a copy inside of my own account. So I'm going to open up my other machine that I have set up here. And I don't know why that popped up. I apologize for the noise if that was extremely loud. Anyway, so this is a completely separate machine that I have set up. You could see VS Code looks nothing like it did on my main machine. And this is really only to demonstrate this. So let's go into, let's see here. I'm going to find, actually, you know what I need to do is I need to flip back here, and we're going to grab this URL. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to this machine, and we're going to paste it in. So you can see, since my repository is public, I'm logged in as this account learning-brianmmdev, right? I can still see everything that's going on inside of here. Make this a little bit bigger. I can still see everything that's going on inside of this repository. So if I want to create it, I want to make changes, and this is, especially with open source software, this is a very, very common way to make changes. What you'll do is you'll fork it to create your own local copy, make all your changes, and then actually create a pull request back into what's called the upstream repository. If I click fork, you can see it'll show you some stuff here, Chuck. I don't know what that is. So it says forking the repository we created, and now the name of the repository is actually learning-brianmmdev as opposed to bmorrisondev, and then the name of the repository. So it's completely separate. If I want to pull this down inside of my machine here, I'd have to get this new URL, and then we're going to pull this down inside of VS Code on this machine. So I'll do Git Clone to pull this down, enter in our URL, and this should clone everything down. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not worried about git lens on this guy. So we have index.html. Here's our changes. So let's just go ahead and make a change and create a pull request. So instead of how to deal with merges, we'll say how to deal with merge conflicts. Again, just making a very, very small change. Let's commit this and push this back up. Fixed last bullet on index.html. And go ahead and Control Enter to save that. I'm going to go ahead and click that icon to sync up. Actually, we'll push and pull. Yeah, go ahead. That's fine. Okay, it looks like everything's synced back up. So if I come in here, let's refresh this. And you can see the little notification I have here is this branch is one commit ahead of bmorrison dev master. I basically made my change. Now, even though I don't have access to actually create a pull request on the upstream, which is my bmorrison dev, I can click on pull request, create a new one, and it does give me access as the base repository of where bmorrison dev is my main account. And then here's my learning-brian-mm-dev is my secondary account. I can create a pull request between repositories because this repository on this machine was forked from the upstream one. So we'll create the pull request. I'm just gonna kind of leave everything as is, create pull request. And it's already says it has no conflicts. Now I can't actually add any comments here. Actually I can't. I can add comments. No, what was I looking for? I can't merge in. That's what I was looking, not add comments. I cannot merge this back into the upstream because I don't have the rights to do that on this account. So if I go back in and I refresh my page, you can see under pull requests, there's this little icon on the right-hand side that says there's one outstanding pull request. So if I click on that, you could say number 2 pull request was opened by learning-brian-mm-dev, and then here's the name of that pull request. So if I click on this, you can actually go into files change. All the process is exactly the same, except instead of working within a single account, like if you have multiple developers that have access to a single repository, you actually have separate accounts with one developer that does not have write access to this repository, but I can still make changes in this way. And this lets the repository owner review the changes and then allow or deny them. And you can go through the whole review process that we just explained a little bit ago. I have nothing really else to add there, so I'll go ahead and merge the pull request. We'll confirm the merge. And that's all. Now, if I come back into GitHub or VS Code here, and I'm sorry, let me do that. I want to click this little sync icon to sync everything down. Oh, that's right. I deleted this branch. So let's go ahead and switch back to master. And let's go ahead and sync that guy down. Here's our change here that we made on a completely separate GitHub account, now merged into our upstream repository. All right, so the last thing that I want to demonstrate is how you can, how merge conflicts are resolved. And there's not really a whole lot of magic process behind it besides you just kind of have to deal with it. All right, so I'm gonna create another branch. Let's go ahead and create a branch called bug hyphen, found a bug. We'll do found a bug. We added this. So we don't have all the changes from our master branch, so let's pull those in. And the way that you can do that is actually by merging the other way. So if I do git merge master, we're pulling all the changes from master inside of this repository. Now we have our last bullet point of how to deal with merge conflicts. So how to deal with merge conflicts? Let's make some change here. How to deal with merge conflicts the best way, right? Why not? Go ahead and save that. And this is a change made on this branch. Now let's go back into master, and this is getting a little confusing because I'm hopping around a lot, but you'll see what I'm talking about when I actually try and create the merge. Oh, hold on one second. We got to go back in here and we have to commit it. So added some cool stuff. All right, so that's committed. Let's go back to master. And now we have how to deal with merge conflicts is back to where it was before, but instead of the best way, we'll say like the proper way, right? Because like this is the proper one. This is the repository we're working on. It has all the best changes, right? So we've saved that. We'll say updated bullet item and go ahead and enter. But let's say I want to merge my changes from that bug branch that we had before into this one, right? So let's open up terminal. And let's do just that. Let's do first I'm going to do git branch v to see our branches, and we'll do git merge. And let's select the found a bug. I'm just going to copy that and paste it and click enter. And you can see now it says actually there's a conflict, right? And I'm not going to do this manually inside of the terminal because terminal will open up. I think it's Vim, and I'm in the group that doesn't really know a lot about Vim, right? But inside of here, you can see now instead of changes or stage changes, you also have merge changes. And this is basically VS Code kind of guiding you through and saying like, hey, these files, I can't figure out what to do with these things. So you need to do it yourself, right? Now, all this really does is it kind of shows you your changes side by side. If I click on this and open it, which sort of was already opened already, you can see like there's the current change, which means that the change that I made on this branch, and then there's the incoming change, which was the change made on the branch we're trying to merge from. And you can see this is also indicated. Head means the master or the main branch, and then here's the branch name that we're trying to merge into. Bug, found a bug. Now, you can do this. You can actually do this manually. Like if you deleted this and cleaned this code up and then just committed it, works just the same. But like, let's say, like this is definitely the one we want to go with, or everything that's lit up in green, like this is the right code. We don't want to deal with the stuff that's in blue. You can actually say accept current change. And what it's going to do is it's going to save what you currently have on this branch and then get rid of everything that was done on the branch it's being merged into. You can do the same thing on accept incoming change. You could accept both, which means that it'll just leave both of them in there. So let's go ahead and accept our current change because I think that looks a little more professional. We'll click on that guy. Now, one thing to note is after you click the button or make your changes, it doesn't actually do anything. All it does is modify the editor. The little round circle up here means the file's not saved. So I have to Control S to save this. And then a way that you can stage changes earlier on in the series, earlier on in this video. Earlier on we talked about how you can stage changes inside of the terminal by using git add dot. A way that you can stage changes inside of here is actually by clicking the plus icon next to the file itself. So I'll click plus to stage those changes. And I'm not sure where they went. Oh, there is no changes because we are just accepted what was already there. So we'll just Control Enter to save our commit. Oh, it doesn't like that. Okay. Let's back up here a little bit, actually. Save this. Let's see. Does it do the same thing? Hold on. We're going to actually back this up and do it again. Delete this. I'm going to undo this guy here. So we'll accept current change. Oh, hold on. What am I doing? Let's just get rid of all this stuff. We'll go back to where we were before. I kind of botched that demonstration, so we're going to try that again. All right, so back where we were before, there's no changes to commit. Let's try and merge this guy back in again. So let's open the terminal back up and do git merge found a bug. Not concluded your merge. Merge had exists, please commit. Well, this is interesting. I'm kind of backed myself into a corner here and I don't know how to undo this. Let's just make a change, I suppose, right? Let's get rid of all that. Control S, and let's say Control Enter. Okay, so that's been done. Now let's try and change this again. So we were at merge conflicts the proper way, and then we had let's see here, some periods here. I know enough about GitHub to do what I need to do and some pretty cool stuff, but I do not know everything about it, admittedly. So try again. Enter. Okay, so that's been there. Now let's try and do this one more time. So let's do git merge found a bug. This is not going my way tonight. All right, let's try something completely different then. Let's go to let's create a new branch. Let's do bug found another bug. Okay, so we found another bug. So we're in this branch already, and let's just add some random text at the end there, right? Just kind of simulating that something's definitely not right. And let's go ahead and say mess the code up, because that's exactly what we did. Hit enter, and we're back to where we were before. I'm going to check back out master, and then we're going to do that merge one more time. So git merge found another bug instead, and hit enter, and it merged it in. Jeez, I really wanted to show how I would do this in the best way. Okay, so let's get rid of this. Go back to where before. And this is the best thing about live streaming, because sometimes you either back yourself into a corner or come across something silly that doesn't work. And this was totally my fault. I fat fingered something and didn't do it the right way. Revert to changes. Hit enter. So that's back to where before. Now let's go back into found another bug. And let's add some changes here. Actually, you know what? No, let's add some changes here. Let's say blah, 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 right? Let's say added some junk. I apologize for the delay. I'm trying to set this back up for the demonstration. Do this the proper way again. Enter, and let's say updated index.html. Make it easy. Save that. Stage that. You guys can more or less ignore what I'm doing here. I apologize again about the skin. I keep apologizing. I'm big on sorry. Okay, so all right, I think we're back to where we were before. Let's go ahead and try and merge this in again. Yeah, we got a conflict again. I never thought I'd be so happy actually introducing merge conflicts into my code. All right, so as said before, you can deal with this in two different ways, right? So what we're actually going to do is we'll just accept both changes, okay? So we have both line items in here. It doesn't really matter what the end result of the code is, I suppose, as long as it's the working way that it should be. So in pretend world, let's say like, no, this is how it should be. Let's go ahead and save that and go ahead and stage that again. So here's our stage changes, and then control enter to commit the code. Now my Git graph is going to look all sorts of messed up because we did a bunch of stuff here, but we can see we merged it after resolving our merge conflicts, basically fixing the code, you know, before we merged into our master branch. So, yeah, that's kind of the stream. Apologize about the little mess up there at the end there. I kind of wish I would have done that a little bit better, but again, such is life when it comes to live streaming. I'm Brian Morrison, software engineer, Chicago, Illinois. Whole deal I said earlier on the stream. I usually do these things every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. So if you're interested in this kind of content, feel free to stop by. Let's see, what do I got on? What do I got on for next week? Let me pull up my calendar here. I've got this fun content dashboard. So I'll give you guys a quick sneak preview of when things are coming out. Let's see here. Let's expand this guy out. So here's actually my Notion setup, my calendar. So next week is building apps with Vue and AWS Amplify, which is a way for you to quickly be able to spin up all sorts of backend, like cool backend services inside of AWS without actually having to deal with it, which is pretty neat. So we'll be covering that. 2 weeks we'll be going over Docker, how you can start with Docker. Again, really base level stuff about Docker. We're going to talk about how to get it set up in your machine, how containers work, how to make containers talk to each other, mounting volumes inside of containers, cool stuff like that. And then the following week we're going to go over how I use Vuex to manage the state within a Vue application, because Vue is my preferred front-end framework. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of it. So thank you for stopping by. Follow me on Twitter. BrianMMDev is my handle, or you can join my Discord server. Fullstack.chat is the URL you want to go to join that. I'm pretty active on there. Yeah, that's the stream. So hopefully, thank you everybody for stopping by, and have a great night. Bye bye.